Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Clear Politics Takeaway for Tuesday, March 29th. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RCP.
I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief.
Good morning, Carl.
It's cold here, Tom. We're having Chicago weather in Washington.
Okay. Carl, were you watching? This is what everyone's talking about and what we need to know. Were you watching when the slap heard around the world occurred on Sunday night at the Oscars?
I wasn't watching the Oscars, but I was notified by several family members, and I was able to watch an Australian TV feed within minutes that had not only the slap / punch, whatever that was, but also Will Smith's vulgarities. I guess the Aussies figure that the F-bomb can be handled by their audiences.
But not here in America. So,
Correct.
Carl, I mean, everyone's kind of, first people thought it was maybe staged, but then you could tell by Chris Rock's response that he seemed pretty shook up and decided to carry on, but was a little flustered, rightfully so. And then minutes later, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes later, whatever, Will Smith is up there accepting the Oscar for Best Actor for portraying the father of Venus and Serena Williams. I mean, it was just crazy. Why wasn't he escorted?
Well, there wasn't time to revoke the award, Tom, between
he should have gotten it in absentia. Carl. He should have been escorted out of the building for assaulting the host.
Yeah,
no?
It's a sign of the. No, it's a sign of the times, Tom. When you throw around goofy phrases like silence is violence and bad words is violence, then what is violence? And so it was a joke at his wife's expense. He didn't like. I think it was impromptu. There's some history between Chris Rock and that couple, not a happy one. But Will Smith's initial reaction was to chuckle. And maybe he wasn't listening. Maybe he just was laughing along with the crowd. But when his wife rolled her eyes, he sort of felt, I don't know, obliged to make a scene. The problem is that, so what is that? Will Smith's one of the most popular people in this country. So what does that tell? You're at a comedians already have enough problems. They can't go on college campuses because laughing is not allowed there anymore. And so people from the audience can come up if they don't like a joke and assault the comedian. It's not a good look. And actually it's worse than that. It's a bad sign for discourse in this country, in my opinion.
It is. And he finally apologized to Chris Rock, but not before he went out and partied after, at the after party, just like nothing had happened. There are pictures of him dancing and singing, his own songs. I mean, it's just like, you would have thought that maybe, this is what, there's a whole range of emotional responses that would be acceptable under those circumstances, right? Maybe he just yelled out to Chris Rock.
Maybe he could have yelled out. He was in the front row, I think, or the second.
He could have yelled something, even a vulgarity, and it would have been okay. That's fine. But what do you have to be thinking in your head to get up and march on stage in a live broadcast before millions upon millions of people and physically put hands on someone?
Well, it surprised me, Tom.
To carry on as if nothing ever happened. It's just crazy.
Well, Will Smith came to the White House Correspondents' Dinner a few years ago and was in the VIP reception before the dinner where you meet the President of the United States goes. This was, I guess, Barack Obama was still president because Donald Trump didn't go to those dinners. And he was there. And I was, as a former president association, I was in that reception. And he was the most gracious person. And, he's a lot of charisma, friendly, nice to people, nice to the waiters. He's nice to my daughter-in-law. He came across as a really sweet guy. And when I saw that the other night, my jaw dropped. It's just not what we want prominent people doing.
All right, Carl, quickly, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about this on Thursday and on our Friday podcast, because it seems to be the gaffe that does not go away. Joe Biden over the weekend in his speech in Poland gave this big speech about liberty and democracy and Ukraine and freedom and finished it by saying, my God, this guy cannot remain in power, meaning Putin. Everyone took him at his word, which was a call for regime change. The administration tried to clarify. Biden spoke again about it yesterday, basically denied that it happened. And said it's ridiculous. How could anybody assume that I was calling for, to take Putin down? That's insane. when in fact it's the plain meaning of the words that he spoke. So we're in this weird situation, Carl, where he's said yesterday he's not backing down from what he said, but he's also claiming that it wasn't what he said, which was a call for regime change. There's a lot of commentary being written about it. We have a ton of stories on the front page of RCP today. We had some yesterday. I'm sure we will have some again throughout the rest of the week. Pretty consequential, whether it was a gaffe, whether it was just Biden expressing moral outrage, whatever the case may be, pretty consequential last line of his speech that continues to reverberate throughout not only the U.S. and the foreign policy establishment, but around the world. What do you make of it?
Well, let's dispense with the rhetoric first of all. I mean, to say it wasn't calling for Putin to be removed, it reminded me of a P.G. Woodhouse skit, where Jeeves is the all-wise butler and Bertie Wooster is his idiot gentleman who he works for, and an aunt that he dislikes comes to visit, and he says, "Jeeves, sick the dogs on her." And Jeeves says, "We have no dogs, sir." And Bertie Wooster says, "Very well, let her in." And he called for this. He said this guy can't remain in power. Well, and then he denies saying it. Look, I don't think this phrase "regime change" is a dirty phrase. I mean, most of the people in the Western world would like a new regime in the Kremlin. That's just their desire. The problem is that in recent history, the United States has gone into Iraq, let's just say, and Afghanistan, and removed the leader of that country. But Putin initially just sort of brushed this off. He says, "Well, it's not up to Biden who gets to be president of Russia. That's up to the Russian people. We have elections. Now, we may not; those elections are probably not fair, and they don't have a free press, but that's their attitude." But the more serious thing here, Tom, it gets to the heart of what the United States policy is in Ukraine. It's this, we've talked about this before, it's this asymmetrical conflict. He's invaded Ukraine with, tanks, drones, airplanes, and infantry shelling buildings. Our counter move against Russia are all economic. And Putin said he's declared economic war on Russia. The Biden administration's approach apparently is to have the Russian people suffer so that they squeeze Putin and demand new leadership in the Kremlin. That's our policy. With this sort of inexact talk and this loose talk by the president, it begs the question: how do we get from there? How do we get from squeezing the Russian economy to the Russian people ridding themselves of a dictator? What is the mechanism for that? We have a story in RealClearPolitics this morning by Susan Crabtree, just how much information Russians are getting. That's part of this impetus comes from Congress, really more than the administration, but to bolster Radio Free Europe so that the Russians at least know what's going on. But the Biden policy is for the Russian people to act against Putin. I just think that's clear, and I don't know the mechanisms by which the administration expects that to happen.
Well, and it seems like, if anything, what Biden did over the weekend is going to prolong the war as opposed to, de-escalate this thing and make it stop and make it end. There are some.
I don't know about that, Tom. I don't know if it has anything to do with the war, but I guess what you're saying is that what you think a more constructive role for the administration would be to try and get out there in front and really jam the Russians in the court of public opinion and demand that there be peace talks and offer to lead them and put the United States efforts into that initiative. I guess that's what you're saying. But there's no evidence. Yeah, there's no evidence Putin will listen to that. So I don't know if it prolongs the war.
I just think we shouldn't.
Wait, Tom. What it does do, though, is it confirm. This is what Putin tells the Russian people. They want to get rid of me. America wants to throw its weight around. It sort of plays into the narrative, that Putin's narrative, I guess,
which he's able to leverage into support, which means he could potentially make this war last longer, as opposed to, I do think the Americans should be leading the charge to sit Putin down in a room with Zelensky and others and, figure out how to make this thing stop, as opposed to going around calling him a butcher and a war criminal and using all of this rhetoric. While it may be true, it is.
Well, it's obviously true, Tom. It's obviously true.
But that's fine. But
Vladimir Putin is not being libeled or slandered.
The point is, Carl, where is that leading us? What if you're using that language in pursuit of an strategic American goal? That's fine, okay. But it seems like Biden's just saying things, but there is no, to your point, there is no goal or there is no way of getting there. And in the meantime, we're not doing it's moving us further away from doing, constructive things to actually end the war, end the suffering, end the killing, and get these two sides to negotiate and make it stop. So we're going to leave it there for this morning. But as I said, we'll be talking about this more, I'm sure, in the coming days. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RealClearPolitics.
I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief of RCP, and this has been the Real Clear Politics Takeaway for Tuesday, March 29th, 2022.